both political parties are very battered, and the people inside the parties have a lot of discontent, and they express it. And that's kind of breaking the paradigm. And, I'll go back to what Tucker Carlson was saying about how it's not Israel, how it's the internal political structure of the US. It's the elites, that they're so corrupt that they actually bend over for, and that's an interesting parallel, because what has usually been said, especially from the left, historically speaking, in defense of all the pogroms, like the history of the Jews being expelled from countries and all of this, is that basically they were scapegoats, right? They were scapegoats that the elites used to be able to do usury, which was an anti-Christian practice. And then once there was unrest, then they would kick out the Jews, right? That's like the historical pattern. And there seems to be some truth to that in what we're seeing today, in the sense that, the corrupt elites, the ones who actually have power, they are the Christian nations, they are the Europeans, they are the Americans. And, it's true that the Israeli lobby has a massive influence over the European nations and the American nation. And so that's undue power, because, so it's like the mob, right? What happens with organized crime? You have these, petty thieves, corrupt people doing extortion and bribery, right? And they function, they grow in power, and they bribe policemen, right? They bribe policemen and inspectors and things like that, and that's how they can operate. So it's the corruption of the internal security that allows for the organized crime to flourish, right? Gangsters, drug traffickers, contraband, etc.
The mafia.
And so as they grow in power, they start, bribing higher and higher officials, right? Until eventually you have mobsters interacting with, politicians, even running for office and stuff like that. They go to the golf courses, and that's an internal corruption. It's not like the mobsters took over the power. It's that the corruption inside the structure allowed for the mobsters to have a undue influence. And this is like an extreme scenario of that, in which you have all these politicians, and they're benefiting from the relation with Israel through all sorts of ways, through all the lobbies and the business deals and the war crimes and everything like that. And so it is still happening by the will, by the decision, the choices of the elites. And it's not just Israel, because it's a whole cohort of other forms of corruption that are destroying those nations in all sorts of ways.
In a prior open mic session, me, Nonia, Gabriel, and DC had a conversation regarding this. Europe's lack of nationalism, because how many people would actually fight for their nation in Europe, or the EU to be very specific? We had this conversation. So yeah, Gabriel, definitely.
Oh yeah, and to close this idea, my point is that it's very possible that we have this scenario unfold, that these corrupt governments, maybe not the same officials because they're too compromised, but the elites, an elite can actually use Israel as a scapegoat,
Yes.
and blame Israel and even the lobbies, the Jewish lobbies, for all of their failures, and use that as a demagogic or a populist narrative to gain power for himself. That is a possibility, and that might explain some of the institutional level sort of shift in narrative or increase of condemnation of Israel. That is something
But
that I see that might be
but
happening.
it's
I,
but it's solely government, but it's solely governmental, institutional, and it's not the public's opinion. That's what we are speaking of. The public says something else, the government says something else. That's the problem. They are not aligned, or they are not even converging at the same point. They are diverging.
yeah,
They see.
absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with both Gabe and Sam, because regardless of whatever the elites and the government are saying, the very fact is, the concerns of the people, right? The movements, the grassroots movements, these are real, right? Whether it's the the sports strikes in Italy by the left, or the anti-immigration movements by the right across Europe, right? These are real issues. These are real things that people actually care about, and if they are not addressed, um, they will not remain addressed, and it'll just, as Nunia said, it'll start boiling
Emulsify.
over. Yeah,
It'll boil over.
and I think EU still has a robust political system, given the fact that what Voyagen said, it has multiple parties, and you have like a milk toast party, a moderate party, and a radical party in both spectrums. So essentially, the concerns of the elites will continue to get addressed somewhat, unless there's something drastic. But I think the two North American governments are more vulnerable to violent change. I think, especially considering the political landscape in especially in America. But yeah, I mean, as Gabriel said, someone will take advantage of this immense potential that is generated by both this anti-immigration movement as well as the anti-Israeli movement, right? In the Europe, we have already seen several right-wing parties, especially like AFD and some UK parties, already capitalizing on it. But we are also seeing in social media the Democrats capitalizing now on anti-Israeli sentiments, right? There are several Twitter pages, and these are linked to several YouTube accounts. I don't know if you guys have seen. There's that they showcase the pictures and names of politicians,
Yeah,
American Republican politicians,
APAC
with red
tracker.
APAC
It's
tracker.
called
Yeah,
APAC tracker.
it's not just
Yeah,
like
and it's a
several of them.
Democrat.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's a Democrat funded and based like org page, whatever, that is basically doing political propaganda. It's proselytizing, using APAC as a villain.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting stuff.
And the funny part about APAC Tracker, right? This used to be Elizabeth Warren's official, election campaign Twitter account, right? And this just turned into APAC Tracker, and they are basically showcasing themselves as apolitical, bipartisan, anti-Israel movement. But in reality, if you look at it, the vast majority of politicians who they are, labeling as pro-Israeli and anti-Palestinian are all Republicans, or including they have made some posts about right-wing European politicians. Now they are not wrong about that, right? These guys have all taken money from APAC, from different Israel lobbies and whatnot. But the fact is, just as many Democrats have, including Bernie Sanders and AOC, whom they have given a complete clean check. We know for a fact that there is this other PAC, not APAC, that's like J Street, I think. J Street gave Bernie Sanders $80,000. That's a lot. Same with AOC and Bernie Sanders. If you follow his politics, every statement he makes about Palestinian movement, and he only makes them when he is forced to by the crowd, by the way, that he is addressing. He starts with the terrible terrorist attack in Oct.7th.
Yeah.
Let me be clear, Israel has complete right to defend itself. These guys are Zionists. Yeah, but
But
there is an effort. There is an effort to capitalize and like whitewash him into being an pro-Palestinian politician, which he definitely isn't. None of the Democrats are, by the way, none of the mainstream, except for like two or three of them. Everyone is in the pockets of the Israelis, right? And let us not forget, like this genocide is just as much Bibi's genocide as it is Biden's genocide, right? Trump inherited this, and despite the immense amount of bootlicking he has done, he has still taken some steps, some statements to withdraw, withheld American support for this war. Biden didn't do anything like that. So Biden, I think, is much more an accomplice to this genocide and should face consequences for it than Trump. But I would say even Trump should. But anyway, Voin, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on Shamapak's opinion that there is no nationalism in Europe. Europe is split in not no, but low.
EU,
Even EU is split, in the eastern and the western part. The western part has kind of associated nationalism with far right extremism from the Nazi time. It's smudgy, it's toxic and stuff. But Eastern Europe sees it differently. The nationalism helps to liberate some parts of this world. Nationalism helps to survive. For some nations, and they don't see it purely negative like in the liberal Western Europe. So if you look at Poland, if you look in Slovakia, Hungary, and in the Balkans, you know that nationalism is a big thing.
Yes, definitely.
Even if you look now Ukraine and the nationalism is a big part of culture, and it's not perceived totally as a negative thing,
Mm-hmm. Well, yet another reason why the EU's plan will fail, because to your point, everybody in the West are all European values, European this, European that. You never hear about Dutch values. You never hear about Spanish values. You never hear about French values. It's all European values. To your point, Eastern Europe is still more nationalistic, which is yet another reason why Europe and the EU will never be able to raise an army, because who, for example, in Eastern Europe is ever going to fight for the jackasses over in Paris, right?
This is what we spoke about.
It's never going to happen, right? You're never going to get it, particularly against the Russians, right? So, the whole idea of Europe doing anything to anybody, to me, is just laughable. That the only time you guys are going to fight is with each other. That's it.
There was this poll in Germany, some weeks ago, that who would fight for Germany if Germany was attacked. I think it was something between 15 or 18% or something.
Yep.
Who said they would, but most missed the point that another more than 20% said they would fight, but not for Germany.
Maybe I shouldn't have said nationalism. I should have said patriotism. Maybe I was wrong. I should have said patriotism. Because the populace doesn't want to fight. They would rather shift to some other European Union nation than they would actually take a stand for their own nation. Ukraine right now being an exception. Even Ukrainians are running off. That's my point.